to understand intervals, let's just return to one of the major scale patterns we learnt in a previous video. Specifically, let's learn or remind ourselves of the pattern that fits over an E-shaped bar chord. So this is a C major scale that fits over this chord. So that was 8-10 on the E string, then 7-8-10, then 7-9-10, then 7-9-10, then 8-10, 7-8 and the optional 10, and reverse 10-8-7, 10-8, 10-9-7, same again, 10-8-7, and then 10-8. Now, intervals are not notes, they're distances between notes. So for example, the first note to the second note is a distance known as a second or a major second. It's called major because it belongs to the major scale. Now anything that belongs to that set of notes is going to be called diatonic. These are diatonic intervals. They belong to the major scale. And we'll look at non-diatonic intervals later. So this is a second or a major second. So if I play the first note to the third note, that distance is known as a major third, or a third if you're lazy like me. Now, that distance is always a third, even if I'm in a different key and using a different scale pattern. For example, if I play a chord of G, there is the third. See, the distance is exactly the same distance that we had up here. If I play a chord of C, there it is again, there's that major third. If I play a chord of D, there it is hiding inside the scale, inside the chord. Now, if you play something like a chord of A, it's a bit harder to spot the third because the B string is an exception to this rule. Thirds look like that on the B string, okay, but it is in there. If I play an E chord, there's our third. If I play an E-shaped bar chord, it's very much in there, but it's hidden. There it is, there's our third there. Okay, so a major third always looks like that. Although there is one other way of playing it. You can play, instead of that, you play that big stretch there. Moving on, we've got what's called the perfect fourth, or if you're lazy like me, just call it a fourth. So I'm going from the first note to the fourth note. Okay, then we've got the fifth, then the sixth. Sorry, the fifth is sometimes called the perfect fifth. And then you've got the major sixth, major seventh, and then the octave. These are both notes of C. Now, if you then look at the next octave from here, so I'm back to C, if I want to play, as well as calling this the eighth note, we can call it the first note again. We're back to the root note. So from this note to the next note is a second. Now, we played a second like this before, which is fine. We can also play it like that. Then we've got our major third again, our perfect fourth, our perfect fifth or fifth. Then we've got our sixth. The B string, remember, everything goes a bit wrong on the B string, so intervals can look a bit different. And then the major seventh, and then the octave. Okay, now, each of these intervals has a particular sound to it, and it's worth knowing what the intervals look like, but what they sound like as well. So a major second is a fairly predictable sound. It sounds like the first two notes of a major scale. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, da, 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 da. And it also sounds like the first two notes of lots of songs, like okay, then we've got the major third, which sounds kind of upbeat. It sounds a bit like the first two notes of the verse of The Simpsons. Daft though that sounds, it's quite a good idea to use songs to memorize what these intervals sound like. The fourth sounds like the Wedding March. Then the fifth sounds like Star Wars. Then the sixth. Not many songs start with that. One I can think of is My Body Lies Over the Ocean. Then the seventh. Now that's kind of a weird sound. That's how I recognise it, because it sounds a bit dissonant. And then the octave sounds like Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Let's now have a look at the non-diatonic intervals, the ones that do not belong to the major scale. We've got this one, the minor second or the flat second. Flattening means to push down a fret. So if this is a second, we sometimes call this a flat second. Really, it's called a minor second. It sounds like Jaws. Then we've got, well, we had the third before. So a minor third or flattened third would look like this, or like this. You might recognise that as the first two notes of a minor pentatonic scale. Okay, so minor chords tend to have this minor third in. If I play a minor chord, like say, well, C minor here, using an E minor shape, you see there's the minor third hiding in there. Okay. If I play a D minor chord, you might be able to spot there's the minor third just hiding in there. Okay. If you play an A minor chord, things look a bit different. Remember, on the B string, a major third was that, so a minor third is that, and there it is hiding in an A minor chord. It's a bit harder to spot if I play an E minor. Here's an E minor, and the minor third is from here to the open G. Okay. The minor third is kind of a dark sound. It sounds, well, if you wanted to use a tune to remember by ear what it sounds like, sounds like Greensleeves. Now the fourth was this. You can't have a flattened fourth really, because you'd end up with the major third again. So ignore that. Now we can have a sharpened fourth, also known as an augmented fourth, or a diminished fifth. Okay, here's a fifth, here's a diminished fifth. So there's two names for this, augmented fourth or diminished fifth. It's a very strange sound. It kind of sounds like the intro to The Simpsons. The Simpsons. Okay, there's that fourth, sorry, sharpened fourth. So sometimes it's called a sharpened fourth or a flattened fifth. And that's useful to know, because when we get to altered chords like altered dominants, we might talk about sharp fives and flat nines. So sharpening something means to pull something up a fret. To flatten something means to push it down a fret. Okay, so then we had a sixth, so this is the minor sixth. Now not many songs start with that, but it's quite easy to recognise by ear because it sounds very dark. In fact, John Williams made good use of this in one of the Star Wars films. There's a tune, I think it was called Across the Stars, and he did something like, there's that minor sixth. You've then got, we had the seventh before, didn't we? The major seventh, so a minor seventh or a flat seven is there. Now you can actually see this flat seven hiding in a seven chord. Here's a C, here's a C7. There is hiding under my bar there. And then of course we can't have a flattened octave because that puts us back to the major seven. So we haven't actually got many non-diatonic intervals. We've got the flattened second or the minor second, the flattened third or the minor third. We've got the augmented fourth or diminished fifth, sometimes just called a sharp four or a flat five. We've got the minor sixth or the flattened sixth. We've got the minor seventh or the flattened seventh. When we get to our C here, this all starts again. We've got a minor second. In fact, for laziness, I'll just call it a flat two, flat three, sharp four or flat five. We've got flat six and flat seven. Anyway, this is all very well, but how can we practice this in a way that isn't boring? Well, we can play licks that specifically focus on one type of interval. So we're going to look at thirds. Have a listen to this lick. So what I've just done there is I've played a series of major and minor thirds. I've gone from the first note, I've jumped to the third note. I've then gone to the note I missed and played a minor third. Then I go to the note I jumped over, which was this one, and played a minor third. Then back a note, jump a note, 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 back a note. Reverse. There's a major third. I could do this with fourths as well, so, but it kind of sounds a bit boring. What I like to do with fourths to make it more interesting is go up a fourth, and on the next one, reverse it, come down a fourth. So I get, and so on. Then we've got fifths. Flat 5 there, and so on. Then we've got sixths, which are very difficult to play and say, but they sound great. This is actually used in a lot of songs, kind of this way, for example. You might recognise that by Bon Jovi, or major sixth, more major sixths, more, and so on. We don't really tend to use sevenths very often, they don't sound great. Now octaves can sound great when they're played at the same time.